That's right, kids. It's time for another episode of 30 Years Ago this month. We've made it to September, which means we are going to be talking about all of the cool shit that happened in September of 1992, 30 years ago this month. Get it? That's the title of the video, right? Anyway, I do this every month. Whatever happened 30 years ago that I feel like talking about, I'm going to talk about it in the world of music and a little bit of movies. But first off, let's get into the music news for September of 1992. Now let's move on to the music charts in September of 1992. Okay, this is the last month that we got to do this. But for the entire month of September and several months previous, if you've been paying attention, the number one album in America was Billy Ray Cyrus, Some Gave All. I feel like I have no more to give with this guy. So, yeah. And to continue to keep things also not very interesting, the number one song in America is the same as last month when we left off, and that is the Boyz II Men song, End of the Road. And the end of the road for this song being number one is way the fuck off. This song dominated for several months, and it makes sense. I told you last time. I love this song. I love early 90s R&B, and End of the Road is a great song. Makes sense that it was super massive in America. I don't know how it was overseas. I'm assuming it did fairly well. But yeah, so Boyz II Men are staying here, and they'll be dominating for the next couple months. Now let's talk about the number one movies in America for this month. And I go by week. You know, the Friday or weekend box office numbers come out, and there's always one movie on top. And a lot of times, like this week, they're mostly movies that I didn't give two shits about seeing back in the day. And most of the time don't even care to watch them now that I'm 44 years old. Not a lot has changed from 14 to 44, but you know, you could tell that by watching my stuff. But the number one movie in America for the first week of September was a movie called Honeymoon in Vegas, starring Nicolas Cage. That's got a lot going for it, that it's a Nicolas Cage movie, but back in the day, I had no desire to see it. I think the movie posters and in the trailers, the big thing about it was like, there's a scene where there's a shitload of Elvis impersonators, and 14-year-old me and 44-year-old me both go, yawn. So I never saw it. I may have caught some of it on TV, but I don't remember anything about it. But it was the number one movie for the first week of September. For the second week of September, the number one movie, which held its spot for 2 weeks, was a movie that I did see called Sneakers. And I remember seeing it in the theater and thinking it was okay, but I don't think I've ever seen it since then. It's got Dan Aykroyd and River Phoenix is in it. Sidney Poitier. Is it Gene Hackman? I think. You know, whatever. You can see the amount of research I do for these movies. Like, do I remember it? Whatever. I'll just talk about what I remember. But that's really it. It was a movie. It had something to do with them being spies or spying on somebody or doing surveillance or some sort of shit. Being sneaky. Hence the name Sneakers. And the number one movie in America for the last week of September 1992 was the Daniel Day-Lewis movie, The Last of the Mohicans. But a movie that came out in September of 1992 that I definitely did see, it just didn't happen to be the number one movie in America, was a little movie called Singles. And it was a big deal. It was, you know, all about grunge kids. Well, some of them were grunge kids, others were just 90s alterna youth who have now become adults. It's one of those movies. I remember when I saw it back in the day in the theater, it was based on mostly the strength of the soundtrack of the Singles movie because it had all sorts of great songs. I talked about it whatever month it was the soundtrack came out, but you know, unreleased shit from Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, I think it was the first time the song Wood by Alice in Chains was out on something, and that's like just one of the best songs ever written. But I remember going to the movie and leaving it kind of going, wasn't really that great.
Wait a minute, man. I don't want to hear anything negative.
It's grown on me over the years, and I think probably it was the fact that I wasn't the target audience. I was a 14-year-old kid who just liked the music. A lot of the things they were dealing with in the movie were like way over my head and not a part of my life yet. But you know, the soundtrack fucking rules, so that's something.
A compliment for us is a compliment for you. No, man. Just negative energy just makes me stronger.
All right, now let's get on to the important shit. The albums that were released in September of 1992. On September 8th, the full-length debut from Ugly Kid Joe, America's Least Wanted, came out. We did a Ugly Kid Joe ranking on Cranked and Ranked 2+ years ago when we first started this shit out. And I talked a lot about how this album, as a 14-year-old kid entering high school, was a big deal for me. It really seemed, and still does seem, like an album made by outcasts that don't really fit in anywhere, which kind of makes sense because they were a band that couldn't really lump them in with like the glam or hair metal scene, couldn't really lump them in with metal or alternative or grunge or anything. And so really like this, it me, as they say. And I really enjoy this record. I even brought out, you know, my CD version. This is how I would have bought it in 1992 on CD, which interestingly enough is a different track listing. This one, you know, Neighbor and then Come Tomorrow. This one, Neighbor and then Goddamn Devil. There's a few little minor changes. Most of you, if you don't care about this album, you don't care what fucking order the songs are in. But America's Least Wanted is a great album. I know Ugly Kid Joe is a band that some people don't take seriously even still today, but I think I was the right age. I was there at the time, and so this stuff resonated with me, and I've just carried that on with me for 30 years. On September 15th of 1992, an album that was totally not on my radar came out. A few years later, I would get into this band and then start loving this album from that point on. But the debut album from the band Failure, Comfort. And this is a fucking great album. Failure is a fucking great band. I've talked about them several times on my channel. I got into them a couple years later when their album Magnified came out and I saw them open for Tool. They've been one of my favorite bands ever since. This album, it's produced by Steve Albini and it has that kind of early 90s Albini sound, if you know what I'm talking about. But this particular version is from the box set that the Failure guys released, which is remixed, remastered versions. And honestly, I think I kind of like this one better than the original Steve Albini version, which is very rare for me. Usually I'm like, don't fuck with shit. But I trust Ken Andrews and Greg Edwards. They're geniuses at what they do. So yeah, Failure, Comfort. Also on September 15th, Greatest Misses. Not a greatest hits album from Public Enemy. What this is half unreleased tracks and then half remixes of some of their classic songs. We did a Cranked and Ranked on Public Enemy, if you want to know what I think about this, because I'm pretty sure we actually included this in our ranking, just because I feel like it's that important of a release. It was really important at the time for me, because I got really into Public Enemy when Apocalypse 91 came out. So when this came out, I was all over it, and I think it has a lot of great tracks. Here, look, here's a gatefold. Boom. Anyway, it's Public Enemy, some of the best hip-hop ever, and this is a release that I don't think gets enough love, but it's really fucking good, so Greatest Misses. We still got a few more to go, ladies and gentlemen. This month is chock full of cool shit. On September 22nd, Broken by Nine Inch Nails was released, the second release from Nine Inch Nails, their first EP, his first EP, Trent Reznor, you know. We did a Cranked and Ranked to Nine Inch Nails, go listen to it. This is the EP that really got me into them. I had heard Pretty Hate Machine, and I thought Head Like a Hole was a cool song. Didn't connect with me at the time. By the time this came out and the video for Wish came on, Headbangers Ball, forget about it. I was all over this EP. It's one of my favorites. I think it might have come in at number 2 in my ranking. I don't really know, maybe 3. I don't know. It's fucking killer. It's Nine Inch Nails. what else do I need to say about it? Also, on September 22nd, trigger warning for those of you who don't want to see gross things, Tomb of the Mutilated by Cannibal Corpse in the original artwork in all its glory. This is classic death metal. This would end up being one of the first death metal albums I ever heard. I believe I would hear it several months after it was released. I think it was probably the end of 1992, maybe beginning of 93 when I first heard this album, but it fucking floored me. I mean, imagine, I wish I could put myself back into the shoes of being a 14-year-old kid who had never really heard music like this before, and then fucking Hammer Smashed Face starts playing. Forget it. It blew my mind then. It's still one of the greatest death metal songs to me, and I love this album. It's I love Chris Barnes' vocals because they're kind of spooky because it's real deep and you can't understand anything he's saying, and that was the first time I'd ever heard vocals like that. Nowadays, somebody does that and I go, get the fuck out of here. But back then, it was cool. Also, this is the last album with Bob Rousset on guitar. Although I'm pretty sure he only does leads on this. I think for rhythm, they didn't let him play on it. If I remember the really great documentary. Look around on YouTube. I think Metal Blade put out this long ass fucking documentary on Cannibal Corpse. Totally enjoyable. I highly recommend it. All right, Tomb of the Mutilated. Okay, on September 29th of 1992, this album came out. Core, the debut album from Stone Temple Pilots. Now, at the time, when this album first came out, we did a ranking of Stone Temple Pilots on the Cranked and Ranked. Go check them all out. We've done a lot of shit. We've been doing it for 2 years and a few months. God damn. Anyway, when this first came out, I was not really into it because I was just like, are they trying to be like a combo of Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains? Because it seems very obvious. And another album that we'll talk about in a minute had come out the same day that I thought was superior and still do think is superior. But once a good friend of mine dubbed me a cassette of this album and I heard the whole thing, I was like, oh, this is actually really fucking good. And I still think it's really fucking good. But yeah, it's a classic at this point. And so who the fuck was I? What did I know at the time? I was just a 14-year-old punk, not an actual punk. But you know what I mean. Anyway, Core, Stone Temple Pilots. Last but not least, on the same day, September 29th, 1992, Dirt by Alice in Chains was released, which is weird because it's like a similar cover. I always thought that also didn't do it a very big service at the time either, because this was the thing everybody was talking about. This was the album that came out and I could not stop listening to it. I think for the rest of 1992 into 93, no matter what I was listening to, I probably followed it up by listening to Dirt. One of my favorite albums of all time. I think a few years ago when I did a top 10 albums of all time, I think I had this at number 2. It might still be number 2. But I love this fucking record. It has aged remarkably well, still sounds amazing. Yes, I'm going to get the 30th anniversary box set, so stay tuned for that video whenever the fuck that comes out. But this is the last album with Mike Starr on bass, unfortunately. But it is it's a goddamn classic. This is one of those albums that if you say to me, I don't really think it's that good, that's when I kind of slowly just start backing away and I say, look, it's not me, it's you. And then I fuck off. Alice in Chains, Dirt. All right, that is it for September of 1992. I feel like that was a lot, which is weird because it was a whole lot of nothing in the beginning and then a bunch of shit at the end. And I feel like I've been talking very fast. I don't know why. I haven't had any coffee or narcotics of any kind, so I don't know. Anyway, I'm just excited to be here. I love doing this for you guys. So thank you very much for watching. Put your comments down below. Like, subscribe, share this shit. Watch a bunch of my other videos because I put a lot of work into this, and there's a lot. I've done a fucking lot of videos, people. So yes, thank you for joining me for the September edition of 30 Years Ago This Month. I will see you all again next month.